The late October light in Forum Hall at Georgia Tech had a particular quality, golden but thin, as if the sun knew winter was coming and was already rationing itself. It slanted across the tiered seats, catching dust motes above the oak floor that still smelled faintly of weekend polish. Aaliyah Thompson entered from the side door, slipping into the last row like someone who had learned early that being seen too soon invited questions she wasn't ready to answer. Her hoodie was faded navy, sleeves pulled over her knuckles. Her sneakers, once white, carried the faint red clay of the West End sidewalks she'd walked from the MARTA stop. 16, a junior at Booker T. Washington High, she carried the kind of knowledge that didn't fit neatly on transcripts. No AP classes offered multivariable calculus here. The advanced math elective had been cut 2 years earlier due to budget shortfalls. Instead, Aaliyah had pieced together her education from library Wi-Fi. Free MIT OpenCourseWare videos watched with one earbud, and while her mother slept on the pull-out couch after graveyard shifts at Grady. The glow of her phone screen had become as familiar as Lena's tired breathing. Tonight's event, Primes and Patterns, a public conversation, was Georgia Tech's annual outreach, free and open, drawing a predictable mix. Undergrads hoping for extra credit, faculty spouses, a few high school teachers scouting talent, and locals who'd seen the flyer on a community board. Aaliyah had come because the title mentioned prime sums, a phrase that had hooked her 8 months earlier during a late-night YouTube rabbit hole. On stage, 3 mathematicians sat under soft spotlights. Center was Dr. Evelyn Caldwell, department chair, silver hair in a low knot, navy blazer tailored sharp enough to signal she had fought for every inch of her position in a field that still tilted male. At 53, her reputation rested partly on a 1998 paper arguing that certain clustering behaviors in sums of primes over polynomials resisted elegant closed-form description, possibly forever. She had called it the kind of wall that keeps the field honest. To her right sat Dr. Marcus Hale, visiting from Howard, 40, wire-rimmed glasses, quiet authority in the way he listened more than he spoke. His recent work on bounded gaps between primes had earned respectful citations without fanfare. The third was a postdoc moderator, mostly there to manage index cards. The talk moved briskly through history. Euler-Gauss, the prime number theorem, then into modern heuristics. Caldwell spoke last, voice measured, almost gentle when describing why some patterns might elude us indefinitely. "We chase elegance," she said, "but sometimes the truth is messier. The distribution of prime sums in certain sequences, take the Patterson problem from 1852, shows clustering that defies simple prediction. After nearly 2 centuries, we still don't know if it's governed by a hidden law or if it's irreducibly complex within our current analytic toolkit." Aaliyah's pen moved steadily across the grid paper in her lap. She had first encountered Patterson's conjecture in a scanned 19th century pamphlet digitized by Hamburg University. A question about whether the partial sums of primes in arithmetic progressions exhibited predictable bunching or remained fundamentally erratic at large scales. The original German text used unvorhersehbar, unpredictable, but the margins held a Latin note in Patterson's hand. Quod demonstrari non potest, ostendi potest. What cannot be proven directly may yet be demonstrated. Her father had copied that same phrase into his own notebook years ago, next to a rough sketch of overlapping regions labeled discrete and asymptotic. He'd died before he could chase it further. The Q&A opened. Attendees scribbled on cards, ushers collected them. Aaliyah wrote carefully, if the clustering resists closed-form prediction, could one instead demonstrate a necessary boundary, a singular transitional scale, where local discrete behavior must intersect asymptotic density in a way that forces the observed irregularity. She signed her full name, folded the card once, and passed it forward. Caldwell read several questions aloud, polite ones about recent sieve methods, a student query on Zhang's bounded gaps. Then she paused at Aaliyah's. From Aaliyah Thompson. Caldwell adjusted her glasses, scanned the back rows until her gaze landed on the hoodie in the shadows. A reframing, not seeking the pattern but proving a boundary point where discrete meets continuous, rendering the pattern inaccessible within existing tools. A murmur moved through the room, curious, not yet mocking. Caldwell set the card down gently, not tearing it. An interesting philosophical pivot, but after 173 years, reframing alone isn't progress. We need rigor, not reinterpretation. The conjecture asks whether the clustering follows a discoverable law, Demonstrating unprovability within ZFC or current analysis would itself be a major result, if substantiated. She looked toward Aaliyah again. If the proposer would like to elaborate briefly, we have time. Aaliyah felt the room tilt toward her. She stood, slowly, no drama, and spoke from her place in the back row. "I've read the Hamburg scan," she said, voice carrying clearer than she expected. "Patterson's marginal Latin isn't casual, it suggests demonstration over direct proof. My father, a community college tutor, saw the same hint in 2015 and sketched a transitional operator in his notes before he passed. I've extended it conditionally using Selberg trace ideas and a weighted Bombary-Vinogradov estimate. It shows that assuming an accessible pattern leads to contradiction at a calculable scale." Silence, then a few scattered nods from younger faculty. Marcus Hale leaned forward slightly, pen paused. Caldwell's expression remained composed, but something shifted. Less dismissal, more appraisal. "That's a bold claim for informal remarks. If you have a written outline, the department would be glad to review it privately. Public forums aren't the place for unvetted technical arguments." Aaliyah nodded once. "I understand. I just wanted to ask if anyone had considered the boundary approach seriously." Marcus spoke then, voice even. "Some have tangentially in prime gap literature. It's not mainstream, but it's not frivolous. I'd be interested in seeing the details, Miss Thompson." Caldwell glanced at him, then back to Aaliyah. "Very well. Submit your notes through the department website. If they hold under scrutiny, we can discuss next steps. In the meantime," she addressed the room, "let's remember that mathematics advances through patient, collaborative effort, not single dramatic gestures." The session moved on. Aaliyah sat, pulse still loud in her ears. No laughter this time, no torn paper, just an open door, narrow, conditional, real. As people filed out into the humid Atlanta evening, Marcus paused near her row. He didn't offer a card, just spoke quietly. "If your father's notes mention a transitional operator, bring them when you submit. Lineage matters in this field." She met his eyes. "I will." Outside, the MARTA lights flickered on along the boulevard. Aaliyah walked toward the stop, backpack heavier with possibility than before. That night, under the apartment's single steady bulb, she opened her father's journal to the page she'd avoided for years. Tucked inside the back cover was the sketch she remembered, two overlapping regions, a rough symbol in the intersection, and on the facing page, a single line dated 2015. "The Hamburg scan is partial. Request full marginal access. Tell Ali the boundary isn't a wall, it's where the question breathes." Below it, almost too faint to read, a tiny Greek epsilon, letter 1F10 lambda pi iota sigma, Elpis, hope. The apartment was quiet at 11:17 p.m., save for the low rattle of the ceiling fan and the occasional sigh of the refrigerator settling. Aaliyah sat at the chipped formica table under the single bulb that flickered whenever the neighbor's AC kicked on. Her father's journal lay open before her, the 2015 page exposed like something that had waited 8 years to be read again. The sketch was small, almost tentative. Two overlapping ovals, one marked local gaps, discrete sums. In his neat block letters, the other asymptotic density, Chebyshev function trends. In the crescent of intersection, a simple symbol. A vertical line crossed by a short horizontal bar near the top, then a faint curve beneath it like a shallow breath. Beside it, the epsilon, letter 1F10 lambda pi iota sigma. And the single line, the boundary isn't a wall. It's where the question breathes. She traced the curve with her fingertip, feeling the slight indent where his pen had pressed hardest. He had never explained it aloud, never had the chance. An aneurysm at 42, gone in hours. The community college had kept his office untouched for a semester before clearing it. She and Lena had collected the boxes themselves. This journal had been at the bottom of the last one, wrapped in a grocery bag like it was nothing special. Tonight it felt like everything. Her phone buzzed once, low battery warning. She plugged it in, then opened her notes app and began transcribing the sketch beside her own rough version from the forum hall. Hers was more formal. She had labeled the intersection Transitional Index Tau, where a local prime-sum cluster Sn equals some sign, p less or equal to n. P, restricted to an arithmetic progression, equaled, for one precise n, the expected asymptotic value from the prime number theorem adjusted for the progression. Not approximately, exactly. Once, she didn't know if it was right, but the coincidence, the same overlapping shape, the same instinct about a singular point made her palms itch. Jamal stirred on the couch, murmuring in his sleep. She crossed the room, pulled the blanket higher over his shoulders. At 12, he still slept like he trusted the world to stay gentle. She envied that. Back at the table, she opened her laptop, second-hand, screen flickering at the edges, and pulled up the Hamburg University archive link she'd bookmarked months ago. The partial scan Patterson had referenced was public domain, but the full marginalia weren't digitized yet. Funding delays, the site said. She stared at the grainy image of page 17 anyway, squinting at the faint pencil in the lower right. Two circles, the operator symbol. The epsilon. Her phone buzzed again, this time a text from an unknown number. "This is Marcus Hale. Department directory lists student emails. I hope you don't mind. If your father's notes contain a transitional sketch, I'd like to see it before you submit anything formal. No pressure, just curiosity." She stared at the screen. He had found her email somehow, probably through the event registration she'd filled out on impulse. She typed, deleted, typed again. "Thank you for speaking up tonight. I'll scan the page tomorrow and send it." She hit send before she could overthink it. Sleep came in fragments, dreams of overlapping circles that kept expanding until they swallowed the room. Morning arrived gray and damp. Lena left at 4:45 a.m. for her shift, kissing Aaliyah's forehead on her way out. "Don't stay up all night again, baby." Aaliyah nodded, already at the table with coffee going cold. By 8:30, she had photographed the journal page, clear, well-lit, no shadows, and emailed it to Marcus with a short note. Attached is the sketch from 2015. He never finished the thought. "The symbol in the intersection matches what I drew last night. I don't know what it means yet." His reply came at 9:42 while she was walking Jamal to the bus stop. "Received. This is striking. The curve under the crossbar resembles an early attempt at a limit indicator function, something like a smoothed step at the singular scale. Patterson's marginal epsilon suggests he viewed the boundary as aspirational rather than prohibitive. I'll study it today. Can we meet briefly on campus this afternoon? Say 3 o'clock outside the math building coffee cart. Bring the journal if you're comfortable." She showed the message to Jamal as they waited for the bus. "He wants to see Dad's book," she said. Jamal squinted at the screen. "Is he nice?" He seemed careful, not like he was laughing at me. "Then go," Jamal shrugged, wise beyond his years. "Worst case, you walk away. Best case, you get help finishing what Dad started." The bus doors hissed open. He hugged her quick, then disappeared inside. Aaliyah walked back slowly, the journal tucked inside her hoodie like contraband. At 2:55, she stood by the coffee cart, hood up against the wind. Marcus arrived at 3:01, carrying 2 paper cups and a leather messenger bag. He handed her one black no sugar. "I guessed," he said. "If I was wrong, I'll get you another." "It's perfect, thank you." They sat on a low concrete wall near the engineering fountain. She pulled the journal from her bag and opened it to the page. He studied it without touching, eyes moving methodically. "The epsilon is deliberate," he said after a long minute. Patterson was romantic in sensibility, believed some truths required more than logic. He marked it with hope, not certainty. "Your father seems to have intuited the same." Aaliyah nodded. "He wrote community college notes in the margins of library books, always said questions were more important than answers." Marcus looked up. "That's rare. Most of us chase answers because questions make us uncomfortable." He handed the journal back gently. "If you're willing, I'd like to help you formalize this. Not take it over, just verify the conditional steps. Bombary Vinogradov is tricky at the scales you're implying. We can tighten the error term with known bounds from Maynard or polymath." She hesitated. "Why help me?" "Because someone helped me once. And because if this boundary exists the way you and Patterson and your father suggest, it reframes not just one conjecture but how we think about irregularity in prime distributions. That's worth a few afternoons." She met his gaze. "Okay, but on my terms, I write every line, you only point out holes." "Agreed." They exchanged numbers properly this time. He stood. "Start with a one-page summary of your operator definition. Send it tonight if you can. I'll read it before my 9 a.m. seminar tomorrow." She nodded. As he walked away, she opened the journal again just to look at the epsilon one more time. It didn't feel like a decoration anymore. It felt like punctuation. That evening, as rain began tapping the windows, her inbox pinged, not from Marcus, but from an anonymous at gaytech.edu address. Subject: Marginalia full Hamburg scan pre-release. Attached: a 47 MB PDF, no message. When she opened page 17, the marginal sketch was sharper than before, same circles, same operator, same epsilon. But in the narrow space beside the curve, a single additional mark. A tiny arrow pointing inward, as if directing attention to the exact point where the question might finally breathe. Rain streaked the kitchen window in thin, silver lines, turning the streetlights outside into soft halos. Aaliyah had the laptop angled so the screen glow didn't wake Jamal, who was asleep on the couch with one arm flung over the edge, comic book still open to a half-finished page. The apartment smelled of cooling chamomile tea, Lena's attempt at calming nerves she hadn't voiced. The anonymous PDF had opened to page 17 without fanfare. The marginal sketch was crisper than the public scan. Pencil lines sharp enough to reveal hesitation in Patterson's hand. The circles were drawn once. The crossbar of the operator symbol thickened as if he'd pressed harder there. And the arrow, a small, deliberate shaft pointing inward from the right curve of the overlap, ending just shy of the center. No label, no explanation, just direction. She zoomed in until the pixels blurred. The arrow felt less like ornament and more like instruction. Look here, not everywhere, here. Her phone lit up on the table. Marcus, texting instead of emailing, got the full scan too. Same anonymous drop, the arrow changes things. It suggests Patterson wasn't hypothesizing a boundary. He was pinpointing its location within the sequence. Likely a specific index scale where the local sum must equal the asymptotic expectation exactly once. She typed back quickly. That matches what Dad sketched. No scale written, but the arrow points to the intersection center. A pause. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared. If we can formalize the arrow as a defining condition for tau, the transitional index, your operator becomes predictive rather than descriptive. Send me your one-pager when it's ready. I'll run some preliminary bounds tonight. She set the phone down and opened a fresh notebook. The first line came easier than expected. Define the transitional index tau as the unique integer where the partial prime sum s tau in arithmetic progression q. Residue satisfies s tau equals lie. Tau, density adjustment for q, plus error 1, with equality forced by contradiction if no such tau exists. She worked slowly, line by line, grounding each step in results she trusted. The Bombary-Vinogradov theorem for average distribution over moduli, Selberg's trace formula for the explicit error terms in prime counting functions. No leaps, no invention for invention's sake, just connecting dots that had been there since 1852. By 1:43 a.m., the one-pager was 7 handwritten pages, dense, crossed-out sections neatly bracketed, question marks in the margins where she wasn't certain. She photographed each page, compiled them into a single PDF, and sent it to Marcus with a short note. Rough but honest. The arrow made me rethink the definition of tau. Let me know what breaks. She didn't expect a reply until morning. But at 2:11 her phone buzzed. Reading now. Strong start. The contradiction setup is clean. Assume no tau, then the variance in prime gaps must grow unbounded in a way contradicted by known bounded gap results. Maynard 2015 et seq. One issue. The error term in your density adjustment is still O, tau 1/2 plus epsilon. We can shave that with recent polymath work on Elliot Halberstam in short intervals. I'll mark suggestions and send annotated scan. By 7 a.m. she stared at the message. 7 a.m. meant he was staying up too. You don't have to pull an all-nighter for this. Already did worse for less interesting questions. Sleep if you can. Tomorrow we tighten. She closed the laptop but didn't move. Instead, she opened the journal again, flipped past her father's grocery lists and half-finished quadratic proofs until she reached the facing page to the sketch. There, in smaller script she hadn't noticed before, Hamburg won't release full margins without formal request. Perhaps next grant cycle. If not me, then someone stubborn enough to keep asking. Below it, almost an afterthought. Questions don't die, they wait for better ears. She pressed her palm flat against the page, feeling the faint texture of old ink. Better ears. Maybe that was all this was, passing the listening along. Jamal shifted, mumbling something about web slingers. She stood, adjusted his blanket, then returned to the table and pulled out a blank sheet. Not math this time, just words. Dad, I found your sketch again. Someone else saw the same shape 170 years earlier and drew an arrow pointing exactly where you did. I'm trying to follow it. If I get lost, I'll remember you said questions don't die. Love, Ali. She folded the note, slipped it between the journal pages, and closed the cover. Morning came too soon. Lena arrived home at 7:22, uniform rumpled, eyes heavy. She paused when she saw Aaliyah still at the table, notebook open, coffee cold. You didn't sleep? A little. Lena set her bag down, crossed to the table, and looked at the journal without touching it. That's his writing. Yeah. He was chasing the same thing. Lena traced the edge of the cover with one finger. He used to say math was the only place where truth didn't care who found it. Rich, poor, young, old, didn't matter, just persistence. Aaliyah swallowed. I'm trying to be persistent. You already are? Lena squeezed her shoulder. But persistence without rest is just stubborn. Go lie down for an hour. I'll wake you if anything comes through. Aaliyah nodded, but before she stood, her phone lit up Marcus's email. Subject, annotated pages plus next steps. The attachment was 23 pages. Her original draft with green highlights for strong sections, red for potential weaknesses, blue marginal notes in his precise hand. Page 3, line 4, good use of Maynard's multiplet sieve bound, strengthened by citing the explicit constant from his 2019 follow-up. Page 5, the arrow as selector for tau is elegant. Formalize it as min n. Sn asymptotic epsilon n, where epsilon decreases slower than any positive power. Overall, this is no longer speculative. If the error terms close, you have a demonstration of necessity, not just a reframing. Meet at 4 p.m. today, same wall by the fountain. Bring coffee this time, I'm running on fumes. She read it twice. Then she looked at Lena. He thinks it could work. Lena smiled, small, tired, proud. Then make it work. But first, sleep. Aaliyah stood, journal under her arm, and headed to her room. She set the book on her nightstand, opened to the sketch and the arrow. Outside, the rain had stopped. Sunlight broke through in thin shafts, catching the water beads on the window like tiny prisms. She lay down, eyes on the ceiling cracks that looked a little like overlapping circles. For the first time in days, the weight on her chest felt less like pressure and more like direction. At 3:50 p.m., as she walked toward campus with 2 fresh coffees in hand, her phone buzzed with another anonymous campus email. This time the subject read, Patterson Family Correspondence 1852-53 excerpt. Attached, a single scanned letter page dated February 1853 in a shaky hand that matched the marginalia. The final line underlined twice. If the arrow finds its mark, the pattern will not be seen, but its absence will be proven necessary. Tell no one until the ears are ready. The bus ride to campus felt longer than usual, the windows fogged from too many breathing passengers. Aaliyah sat near the back, phone cupped in both hands, the anonymous email open on her screen. The scanned letter page was fragile even in digital form. Yellowed edges, ink faded to sepia, handwriting slanted as if written in haste or weakness. Patterson's February 1853 letter to his sister, Margaret. The underlined line stared back at her. If the arrow finds its mark, the pattern will not be seen, but its absence will be proven necessary. Tell no one until the ears are ready. She read it 3 times before the bus jolted to her stop. The words weren't triumphant. They were careful, almost resigned. Patterson had known he was dying. Tuberculosis had already hollowed him by then, and yet he'd hidden this final thought in family correspondence rather than the manuscript itself. Why, she tucked the phone away and walked the remaining blocks to the math building, 2 paper cups balanced in a carrier. The fountain was running today, a low, steady murmur against the afternoon traffic. Marcus was already on the low wall, coat collar turned up, scrolling through something on his tablet. He looked up when her shadow fell across him. You're early. Couldn't sit still. She handed him the coffee, black, no sugar. The new drop came through. It's a letter. February 1853. Marcus accepted the cup, then took her phone when she offered it. He read in silence, eyes narrowing at the underlined sentence. This isn't just philosophy, he said finally. He's describing the proof strategy. The arrow selects the scale where equality must hold. If it does hold at that precise point, then any broader pattern would require the sums to deviate systematically afterward, which they don't, per the density theorems. Absence of pattern becomes the demonstration. Aaliyah sat beside him. He says tell no one until the ears are ready, like he knew it would be misunderstood. Or suppressed. Marcus handed the phone back. In 1853, number theory was still recovering from Gauss. A dying man claiming to resolve a conjecture by proving it unresolvable in the usual sense. It would have been dismissed as delirium. Better to leave breadcrumbs. She looked at the fountain, water catching late sunlight in small sparks. The anonymous sender knows more than they're saying. First the high-res scan, now family letters. Someone has access to restricted archives or private collections. Marcus nodded slowly. Patterson descendants still exist. There was a great-niece mentioned in a 2018 genealogy footnote, Clara something. She donated a few items to Hamburg but kept the bulk private. If this is her or someone close, they're choosing who sees it. Why me? Because you asked the right question in public. And because your father's name appeared in an old archive request log from 2015. Same phrasing, transitional boundary. They connected the dots. Aaliyah's stomach tightened. Dad requested the full margins? Apparently. Never followed through, probably because of the diagnosis. But the request left a trace. She exhaled through her nose. So this isn't random kindness, it's curation. Exactly. Marcus set his coffee down. Which means we proceed carefully, no public posting, no casual mentions. We formalize your operator using the arrow as the selector condition, tighten the bounds, and only then decide what to submit to the department. He pulled out his tablet, opened a shared document, her one-pager, now annotated in 3 colors. Green for solid, yellow for needs work, red for critical. Start here, he said, zooming to the error term section. Your O, tau 1/2 plus epsilon, is conservative. Recent work on short-interval Elliott-Halberstam lets us push it to O, tau theta, with theta approximately 0.4 under GRH weakened assumptions. If we avoid GRH entirely and stick to unconditional sieve methods, we lose elegance but gain defensibility. Aaliyah leaned in. I'd rather be unbreakable than beautiful. Good instinct. He tapped the screen. We rewrite lemma 3 with the Maynard tau multiplet weights explicitly. It'll lengthen the proof, but no one can dismiss it as conditional sleight of hand. They worked there on the wall for nearly 2 hours, quiet discussion, occasional silences while one of them thought, the fountain providing steady white noise. Marcus never took the pen from her. He pointed, questioned, suggested. She wrote, crossed out, rewrote. By the time the light began to slant orange, lemma 3 had grown from 12 lines to 28, but the constant was tighter, the contradiction sharper. Marcus closed the tablet. This is starting to breathe on its own. Aaliyah looked at the revised page on her phone. Dad would have liked the arrow part. I suspect he would have. Marcus stood, stretched. Send me the updated lemmas tonight. I'll check them against the polymathiate billion bounds before bed. She nodded. Thank you for not treating me like a kid with a hobby. He met her eyes. You're not. You're carrying a thread that's been dangling since 1852. That deserves serious attention. They parted at the fountain's edge. He headed toward the faculty lot, she toward the bus stop. Back home, the apartment smelled of Lena's chicken and rice, comfort food after a long shift. Jamal was at the table doing homework, tongue between his teeth as he wrestled with fractions. Lena looked up from the stove. You're smiling. Am I? Like you found something. Aaliyah set her backpack down. I think we did. She didn't mention the letter yet, not until Jamal was in bed and the dishes were done. Then she sat with Lena at the table, phone open to the scan. Lena read it slowly, lips moving over the words. When she reached the underlined line, she paused. He was protecting it, she said quietly. Like your dad protected his notebooks, didn't want them laughed at before they were ready. Aaliyah nodded. I'm trying to make them ready. Lena reached across, covered Aaliyah's hand with hers. Then do it careful, not fast, not for applause, for the question itself. They sat like that until the kitchen light buzzed once, twice. Lena stood first. Get some rest. Genius needs sleep too. Aaliyah stayed a little longer, staring at the arrow on the screen. Then she opened her notebook and began copying the revised lemma 3 in her own hand, slow, deliberate, every symbol placed like a step on a path that had waited long enough. At 11:49 p.m., as she saved the updated document, another email arrived from the anonymous account. No subject, just an attachment, a single photograph, not a scan but a modern snapshot of an old wooden box labeled F. Patterson Private Corps, 1850-53. Inside, visible through the open lid, a thin sheaf of letters and, resting on top, a folded sheet with the familiar overlapping circles drawn in the same faint pencil. Below the photo, one typed line. The ears are ready when you are. Friday, Rare Books Room, 2:00 p.m. Come alone. The Georgia Tech Library's Rare Books Room smelled of old leather and controlled humidity. Cool, dry, faintly metallic from the climate system humming behind the walls. Aaliyah arrived at 1:48 p.m., ID already in hand, heart beating steady, but loud enough that she wondered if the security guard at the desk could hear it. He glanced at her face, then at the screen, and nodded without comment. Word traveled fast on campus these days. Inside, the room was smaller than she'd imagined. Tall glass cases lining 3 walls, soft amber lighting, a single long oak table in the center. One woman waited there, seated with posture that spoke of long habit. Back straight, hands folded, an archival box placed precisely before her like an offering. She rose as Aaliyah approached. Mid-50s, silver hair cropped close, navy cardigan over a cream blouse. Eyes the color of winter sky, cool, observant, not unkind. Clara Patterson Voss, the woman said, extending a hand. Her grip was firm, brief. You're Aaliyah Thompson. Aaliyah nodded, sat when Clara gestured to the opposite chair. The box between them was plain oak, lid open, labeled in faded black ink. F. Patterson, Private Corps, 1850-53. You sent the emails, Aaliyah said quietly, not a question. I did. Clara's voice was low, accented faintly, German inflections softened by decades in the States. And the scans and the photograph of this box. My sister Helena would have a fit if she knew I was sharing any of it before her review panel convenes. Aaliyah's pulse skipped. Helena Voss, the Caltech reviewer. My older sister, yes. She's arriving tomorrow for pre-deliberation meetings. She believes your approach is speculative at best, dangerous to the field's credibility at worst. Clara opened the box wider. Inside, a thin stack of letters tied with faded ribbon, several folded sheets of manuscript paper, and on top, the original of the photograph. The overlapping circles drawn in pencil so light it looked like a breath on the page. The arrow. The epsilon. Friedrich Patterson was my great-great-uncle, Clara continued. He died at 31, tuberculosis. He knew the end was coming, so he wrote letters instead of publishing half-finished thoughts. This one, she lifted the February 1853 letter Aaliyah had seen digitally, was never meant for the public archive. He sent it to his sister, my great-great-grandmother. She kept it and the family kept it after her. Aaliyah looked at the page again, closer this time. The ink was brown, the paper brittle at the edges. The underlined sentence seemed darker, as if he'd gone over it twice. Why show me now? Aaliyah asked. Clara's gaze softened, just a fraction. Because you asked the question he hoped someone would ask, not what is the pattern. But why can't we see it? That's the difference between chasing elegance and facing necessity. Helena thinks reframing is weakness. I think it's courage. She slid the original marginal drawing across the table, careful, gloved fingers. You may photograph it, handle it gently, return it before you leave. Aaliyah took the sheet. Up close, the pencil lines showed tremor, illness already advancing, but the arrow was steady, deliberate. She used her phone, 3 quick shots, then set it down. My father sketched something almost identical, she said, in 2015. He requested the full margins from Hamburg, but never got them. Clara nodded. I saw the request log when I digitized the family holdings 2 years ago. Your last name caught my attention. I cross-referenced. When your question appeared in the forum transcript, viral within hours, I knew the ears were ready. Aaliyah exhaled slowly. The arrow. In the letter he says if it finds its mark, the pattern's absence becomes necessary. That's what I'm trying to show. That the transitional index tau must exist, and at tau the local sum equals the asymptotic exactly once. After that, deviation is forced, proving no global closed-form pattern is accessible. Clara's lips curved, not quite a smile. Exactly, Friedrich wasn't trying to solve the clustering. He was trying to explain why it stays unsolved. The arrow is his pointer to the singular scale. Use it, not as decoration, as definition. Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside, measured, professional. Clara closed the box. My sister will be here soon. She can't know I spoke to you. Aaliyah stood. Thank you for trusting me with this. Clara met her eyes. Trust is earned by persistence. You've shown plenty. One last thing. When Helena presses you on the origin of your operator, tell the truth. It came from a dying man's margin, from your father's notebook, from you. Lineage isn't credential. It's continuity. She slipped out through a side door just as Helena Voss entered from the main entrance, briefcase in hand, expression composed, eyes scanning the room. They locked on Aaliyah. Miss Thompson, Dr. Voss, a beat of silence. Helena's gaze flicked to the closed box on the table. Preparing sources? Reviewing marginalia, Aaliyah said evenly. Public scans only. Helena's lips thinned. Tomorrow will be thorough. No shortcuts, no sentiment. I understand. Helena studied her a moment longer, searching, almost curious, then moved to a far case and began pulling volumes. Aaliyah left without looking back. In the stairwell, she paused, leaned against the cool concrete wall, and pulled up the new photographs. The arrow seemed sharper in the library light. She traced it on the screen with her fingertip. Outside, the afternoon had turned golden, the kind of light that made Atlanta feel almost gentle. She walked to the bus stop slowly, the journal and her notebook pressed against her chest. Jamal met her at the apartment door, homework already abandoned. You look like you found treasure. Something like that. She ruffled his hair. Old treasure, someone else's, but they let me borrow it. Lena came home an hour later, takeout bags in hand, collared, cornbread, fried okra from the place on MLK. They ate at the table, papers pushed aside. Aaliyah told them about Clara, the box, the lineage. She showed the photograph of the original marginal drawing. Lena looked longest at the arrow. Your dad would have drawn that same line. Steady hand when it mattered. Jamal squinted at the epsilon. What's that squiggle mean? Hope, Aaliyah said. Not the fluffy kind, the kind that points. After dinner, she sat alone at the table, opened her notebook to the latest lemma revision. She added one line at the bottom of the transitional index definition. Tau is selected by the condition that the deviation Sn asymptotic reaches its global minimum at n equals tau, as indicated by directional selector arrow in source marginalia. Simple, honest, unapologetic. She saved the document, then stared at the photograph one more time. The arrow didn't point outward, it pointed in, toward the center, toward the place where the question had always been waiting. Friday morning arrived with a department-wide email blast. Patterson evaluation rescheduled to tomorrow, 7:00 p.m., Forum Hall. Expanded panel confirmed. All are welcome. E. Caldwell. Attached was the reviewer list. Caldwell Chair, Hale Voss Caltech, Greer Oxford, Dean Whitaker Neutral. But buried in the thread, already buzzing with speculation, was a new anonymous post on the campus forum. A single image of the original marginal drawing, arrow circled in red, caption, "The ears have heard. Now let the proof speak." Friday morning broke clear and sharp, the kind of Atlanta light that made every edge feel defined. Buildings, sidewalks, the worry lines on Lena's forehead as she packed her lunch before dawn. Aaliyah woke to the department email already open on her phone, the rescheduling announcement bolded at the top like a summons. Tomorrow, 7:00 p.m. Forum Hall, expanded panel, all welcome. She read the reviewer list twice. Caldwell chairing, Marcus Hale, Helena Voss, Roland Greer, Dean Whitaker neutral. 4 against one possible ally if Marcus counted as such. The anonymous forum post had already ignited the thread, over 300 replies in 12 hours. Most were speculation, a few were outright hostile. One user, anonymous as always, had reposted the circled marginal drawing with a single comment, "The arrow doesn't lie." Neither should the proof. Aaliyah set the phone down and stared at the ceiling. The cracks looked different today, less like random lines, more like paths converging. Jamal shuffled into the kitchen in pajamas, rubbing his eyes. "You're up early. Or did you not sleep?" "Little of both." She poured him cereal, added the last of the milk. "The big talk is tomorrow night now, they moved it up." He paused mid-bite. "They scared." "Maybe." She sat across from him. "Or maybe they just want it over." Lena emerged from the bedroom, scrubs on, hair pulled back. She looked at Aaliyah's face and didn't ask if she was ready. Instead, she said, "I switched my shift. I'll be there. Front row if I have to elbow someone." Aaliyah managed a small smile. "You don't have to." "I do." Lena kissed the top of her head, then Jamal's. "Both my kids get to see me show up when it matters." The door closed behind her. The apartment felt quieter, smaller. By noon, Marcus texted, "Meet at 2:00. Library study room 412. Bring the latest draft and the new marginal photo. We have 1 day to make it ironclad." She arrived early, notebook and printed pages in her bag. Room 412 was small, table for 4, whiteboard on one wall, window overlooking the quad. Marcus was already there, sleeves rolled, legal pad covered in notes. He looked up. "You saw the reschedule and the forum post." She set her things down. "Someone's watching close." The arrow photo went viral in the comments. Marcus nodded. "I saw, it's not subtle, but it's not bad either. Public pressure might keep the panel honest." They spread the pages across the table. Aaliyah's latest draft was now 42 pages. Lemmas chained tight, error terms shaved to unconditional bounds using Maynard's multiplet weights, and the short-interval results Marcus had flagged. The transitional index tau was defined explicitly. Let tau be the minimal n such that Sn lie, n, phi q/q epsilon n, where epsilon n equals n 0.4. Log n. C, for sufficiently large C from polymathiate billion unconditional corollaries. And the selector condition arrow enforces uniqueness by requiring the deviation reach its infimum at exactly one point in the sequence. Marcus read it aloud, line by line, pausing only to question a constant or tighten a reference. "Here," he said at lemma 5, tapping the contradiction step. "Assume no such tau exists. Then the variance of the error terms grows, at least linearly in log n, contradicted by the bounded gap results averaged over arithmetic progressions." Solid. But add the explicit citation to Zhang's original 70 million bound and Maynard's subsequent improvement to 246. It grounds the contradiction in published numbers, not asymptotics. Aaliyah penciled the additions in the margin. Done. They worked through the afternoon, quiet, focused, the only sounds the scratch of pens and the occasional murmur of clarification. At one point, Marcus leaned back, rubbed his eyes. This isn't flashy, he said. No elegant closed form, no sudden revelation, just necessity demonstrated through contradiction. That's what Patterson wanted. Aaliyah looked at the marginal photo taped to the top page, the arrow circled faintly in her own red pen. He knew it wouldn't look pretty, that's why he hid it in letters. Marcus met her gaze. And why he marked it with hope, not certainty, she exhaled. I'm still scared. Tomorrow, if they tear it apart, if Greer calls it hand-waving, if Voss says it's philosophy dressed as math, then you answer, calmly, with the pages in front of you. He slid the draft back toward her. This holds, not perfectly, no first draft does, but enough to demand serious consideration, and if they dismiss it, the forum will see. The world will see. She nodded, throat tight. They wrapped at 5:30. Marcus stood, stretched. Get home, eat something real, sleep if you can. I'll be in the front row tomorrow, not as faculty. As someone who believes the arrow points true. She walked home through early evening traffic, the draft heavy in her bag. Atlanta smelled of diesel and blooming jasmine, ordinary, grounding. Jamal was waiting at the door with Simone, who'd brought pizza and a stack of printed memes from the viral threads, mostly supportive, a few savage. They ate on the couch, laughing at the worst ones, the tension loosening just a fraction. Lena came home at 8:15, still in scrubs. She looked at the pizza box, the scattered papers, her daughter's face. Tomorrow, she said simply. Aaliyah nodded. After Jamal and Simone left for bed, Lena sat beside her on the couch. No words at first, just presence. Then Lena spoke quietly. Your dad used to get like this before a big tutoring session, pacing, rewriting notes, said the fear meant it mattered. Aaliyah leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. Does it ever go away? The fear? No, the feeling that it matters, that stays too. They sat until the city quieted outside. Aaliyah finally stood, carried the draft to her room, placed it beside the journal. She opened to her father's sketch, traced the arrow one last time. Then she added her own small mark below it, a tiny check mark in pencil, not triumph, acknowledgement. The path was set. At 11:22 p.m., as rain began again, soft, steady, her phone lit with a final anonymous message. No attachment this time, just text. The box is open. The ears are listening. Tomorrow, speak what the arrow has pointed to all along. See, and below it, a single line in italics, proceed anyway. Rain returned after midnight, soft at first, then steady, drumming on the metal awning outside Aaliyah's window like fingers impatient for morning. She hadn't slept more than fragments since the rescheduling email. The draft, now 48 pages, bound with a heavy clip, sat on her nightstand beside the journal, the marginal photograph taped to the cover like a compass rose. The arrow pointed inward, always inward. She lay on her back, eyes tracing the ceiling cracks that no longer looked random. They converged toward the center of the room, mirroring the transitional index tau she had spent weeks defining. Necessity, not invention. Absence proven through presence at one precise point. Her phone glowed on the pillow. 11:47 p.m. Clara's final message still open. The ears are listening. Tomorrow, speak what the arrow has pointed to all along. See, proceed anyway. The words had settled into her like a second heartbeat, not a command, permission. She rose quietly, slipped into the living room. Jamal was asleep on the couch, one leg dangling, comic book tented over his chest. Spider-Man mid-leap, frozen forever. She pulled the blanket higher, then sat cross-legged on the floor beside him, draft in her lap. She opened to the final page. QED stared back, small, black, final. Beneath it, she had written in her own hand, pencil faint. If the boundary exists at tau, then the clustering pattern cannot be captured by any closed-form law accessible within current arithmetic tools. Demonstration complete. No flourish, no poetry, just the truth Patterson had left waiting. She closed the binder, set it aside, and opened the journal instead, flipped to her father's sketch. The arrow there was steadier than Patterson's. Illness hadn't touched his hand yet. Below it, his note from 2015, tell Ali, the boundary isn't a wall, it's where the question breathes. She pressed her forehead to the page for a long moment. The paper smelled faintly of old ink and dust and him. I'm listening, Dad, she whispered. I'm trying to breathe with it. Jamal stirred. Sis, she looked up. His eyes were half open, sleepy but sharp. Can't sleep either? He sat up slowly, rubbing his face. You're scared. Yeah, no point in lying. Tomorrow's big. If I mess up, you won't. He scooted closer, leaned against her shoulder. Even if they yell or whatever, you already did the hard part. You followed the arrow. Like Spider-Man follows the web. Sometimes it breaks, but he keeps swinging. Aaliyah laughed, soft, surprised. You make it sound easy. It's not. But you're not doing it alone. He pointed to the binder. That's got Mom, me, Marcus, that dead German guy, Clara lady, and Dad all in it. That's a whole team. She wrapped an arm around him. You're wise for 12. Learned from the best, he yawned. Go to bed, you need superhero rest. She kissed the top of his head. You too. He lay back down. She stayed on the floor a little longer, watching his breathing even out. Then she stood, carried the binder to the kitchen table, and opened her laptop one last time. Marcus had sent a final email at 10:32 p.m., last read-through. Flawless. The contradiction in Lemma 7 is airtight, unconditional, explicit constants, no gaps. You've demonstrated necessity without assuming anything unproven. Tomorrow isn't about winning a debate. It's about showing the field what patient listening looks like. I'll be there. Front row, left side. You won't see me, but I'll see you. Get some rest, Ali. The arrow's already found its mark. She read it twice, then closed the laptop. No more revisions. No more doubt tonight. In her room, she changed into sleep clothes, slid under the covers. The rain had softened to a murmur. She reached for the journal, placed it on her chest like a shield, and closed her eyes. Sleep came slowly, fitful images of overlapping circles, arrows lengthening into paths, voices murmuring in German and English, and her father's quiet laugh. But when it arrived, it was deep, dreamless. She woke at 5:38 a.m. to sunlight cutting through the blinds in clean gold bars. Jamal was already up, burning toast in the kitchen, jam smeared in the shape of a lopsided smile on a plate. Breakfast of champions, he announced, sliding it toward her. She laughed, hugged him from behind. Thanks, little man. Lena emerged, coffee in hand, already dressed for the day. I'm off at noon. I'll meet you at the hall by 6. Simone's coming too. She's bringing the group chat army for moral support. Aaliyah nodded. I'm ready. Lena studied her face. You look it. The morning passed in quiet routine. Shower, braid her hair tight, pull on the simple black dress Lena had bought her last birthday. No flash, just clean lines. She slipped the journal into her backpack beside the binder, Patterson's arrow and her father's checkmark side by side. At 5:15, they left together. Lena driving the old Honda, Jamal in the back seat with Simone, who was already live-tweeting encouragement under number arrow-proof. The campus approached slowly, Forum Hall glowing against the dusk like a beacon. They parked. Aaliyah paused at the steps, backpack heavy on one shoulder. Lena squeezed her hand. You walk in like you belong because you do. Jamal grinned. Swing like Spider-Man. Simone held up her phone. We got you. Aaliyah took a breath deep, steady. She stepped inside. The hall was already half full more than last time. Whispers followed her down the aisle, phones lifted. But she kept her eyes forward, toward the stage where the panel waited. Caldwell at center podium, Helena Voss and Roland Greer flanking her, Marcus Hale seated quietly to the side, Dean Whittaker at the end with gavel in hand. Caldwell's gaze met hers across the room. No smirk, no crossed arms, just a single measured nod, as if acknowledging someone who had finally arrived at the same threshold. Aaliyah climbed the steps, set the binder on the table, opened it to the first page. The lights felt warmer this time, not blinding, illuminating. Dean Whittaker stood. We begin. Miss Thompson has 35 minutes to present her demonstration of the Patterson conjecture. Questions may interrupt. Miss Thompson? She turned to the whiteboard, picked up the marker, drew the two circles first, simple, familiar, then the overlap, then the arrow. Thank you for being here, she said, voice clear, carrying to the back row. This is not about finding a pattern. It's about showing why the pattern must remain hidden. Friedrich Patterson left us an arrow in 1852. My father followed it in 2015. Tonight, I point it forward. The room leaned in. She began. As her marker moved, lemma by lemma, contradiction by contradiction, the anonymous forum thread exploded with a new post. A live screenshot of the whiteboard, arrow circled again, caption spreading faster than the proof itself. She's drawing the line Patterson left, and the field is finally listening. Forum Hall held its breath as Aaliyah stepped to the whiteboard. The marker felt cool and familiar in her hand, no tremor, no hesitation. 35 minutes on the clock. 3,000 eyes, real and digital, watching. She began where everything had begun, with the arrow. She drew the two circles first, clean, deliberate. One labeled local behavior, discrete prime sums in AP. The other, asymptotic behavior. Density via Lie, N, adjusted for residue class. The overlap she shaded lightly, then placed the arrow inside it, pointing precisely to the center point she had named Tau. This arrow, she said, voice steady and carrying to the back, was drawn in 1852 by Friedrich Patterson in the margin of his manuscript. It was redrawn in 2015 by my father in his private notebook. Tonight it points to the same place. The transitional index tau, the unique scale where local and asymptotic must meet exactly once. Murmurs rippled. Phones stayed raised. Caldwell sat motionless at the podium, hands folded, expression unreadable. Helena Voss leaned forward slightly. Roland Greer's pen hovered over his legal pad. Aaliyah continued, marker moving in measured strokes. Patterson did not ask for the pattern governing prime-sum clustering in arithmetic progressions. He asked whether such a pattern could be accessible within the arithmetic we have. His arrow selects tau as the minimal n, where the deviation Sn, expected asymptotic value, reaches its global infimum, forced to zero by the density theorems we already accept. She wrote the definition of tau formally. Tau equals min n. Some sign p less or equal to n, p identical to a mod q p phi q slash q lie n epsilon n, with epsilon n equals n 0.4. Log n. C. From Unconditional Short-Interval Bounds, Polymathiate Billion Corollaries, Maynard 2019 Explicit Constants. The selector condition, the arrow, ensures uniqueness. Assume no such tau exists. Then the error terms must grow at least linearly in log n on average over residue classes. But Maynard's bounded gap results 246, and Zhang's original 70 million bound, averaged via Bombary-Vinogradov, capped that growth. Contradiction. She stepped aside so the board was fully visible. Therefore, tau must exist. At tau, local equals asymptotic exactly once. After tau, systematic deviation is forced, proving no global closed-form pattern is discoverable within current tools. Demonstration, not direct proof. QED, the room held silence for 3 full seconds. Then Greer spoke, voice clipped. Your contradiction relies on averaging over progressions. But Patterson's original question was for a fixed progression. Justify the extension. Aaliyah met his eyes. Page 34, lemma 6. The arrow selects tau within the fixed progression QA. The averaging is only used to bound the error growth if no tau exists. Standard sieve technique. The contradiction holds locally because the unconditional density bound applies per class via the Siegel-Wolfis theorem for small q. Greer made a note. No follow-up. Helena Voss raised a hand next. The arrow is historical, not mathematical. How do you justify importing it as a formal selector? It is formal, Aaliyah said evenly. The arrow indicates the point of minimal deviation, the infimum condition. Patterson used it symbolically. I use it definitionally. Lineage matters. My father saw the same necessity in 2015. The operator emerged from necessity, not invention. Voss's lips pressed thin, but she nodded once, small, almost imperceptible. Caldwell spoke last. Her tone was measured, careful. Miss Thompson, you have reframed the conjecture from find the law to prove no law is findable. That is philosophically bold. But philosophy is not proof. Where is the fatal flaw previous attempts missed? Aaliyah turned fully to her. They chased elegance, a single formula for all scales. You argued unprovability within existing frameworks. Patterson suggested demonstration via boundary. The flaw was assumption, that irregularity must be chaotic everywhere. The arrow shows it is precise at one point. That precision forces the rest to remain inaccessible. No flaw, just a different question. Caldwell held her gaze. Something shifted, not defeat, but recognition. She looked down at her notes, then back up. Time, Miss Thompson. Dean Whittaker cleared his throat. The panel will recess for deliberation, 20 minutes. They filed off stage. Aaliyah remained at the board, back straight, facing the sea of faces. Whispers rose, then fell, phones still recording. In the front row, Marcus gave her the smallest nod. Lena's eyes shone. Jamal pumped a silent fist. Simone's livestream chat scrolled furiously. Support, questions, awe. 20 minutes stretched. Aaliyah stood still, marker still in hand, arrow still pointing on the board. They returned. Whittaker at the podium. The panel has reviewed the presentation, supporting materials, and historical context, including the marginalia and correspondence provided anonymously to the department this afternoon. A ripple through the room. Anonymous no longer. After careful consideration, Whittaker continued, there is consensus. The demonstration is rigorous, unconditional, and resolves the Patterson conjecture as originally posed in 1852. The boundary at tau is proven necessary. the inaccessibility of any global pattern within current arithmetic is demonstrated. The conjecture is settled, not by finding the pattern, but by showing why it cannot be found. The hall erupted, cheers, gasps, applause crashing like sudden rain. Jamal whooped loudest, jumping onto his seat. Lena stood, tears streaming, clapping until her palms reddened. Simone live-streamed through blurred vision. Caldwell stepped forward. The noise quieted just enough. She looked directly at Aaliyah. "I was wrong," she said simply. "I defended limits because I believed they protected the field. You showed they can blind us. For my skepticism, my conduct at the first forum, and for underestimating who gets to ask the questions, I apologize. Publicly, without reservation." She extended her hand. Aaliyah crossed the stage. Their grip was firm, equal, no power play, just acknowledgement. Caldwell stepped back. "The department will submit this demonstration to the annals with highest priority. Early admission and full support are offered, Miss Thompson. We would be honored to continue this conversation here." More applause. Aaliyah nodded once, grateful, quiet. Marcus rose then, climbed the steps, stood beside her, not touching. Just present. Jamal rushed the stage next, hugging her waist. Lena followed, pulling her close, hospital, antiseptic, and home in one embrace. In the chaos, reporters surging, flashes popping, Aaliyah slipped the journal from her backpack and placed it gently on the podium beside the binder. Open to her father's sketch. The arrow pointed the same way it always had. A photographer captured it, 1852 margin beside 2025 proof. The image began circulating before she even left the stage. Caption spreading fastest, "What cannot be proven can be demonstrated." Marcus leaned close amid the noise, voice low for her alone. "Dinner after, no equations, just us." She looked at him, really looked. The quiet strength in his eyes, the faint smile that had carried her through weeks of doubt. "Yeah," she said, "just us." They walked off the stage together, not hand in hand, not yet. Side by side, the threshold crossed, the question answered. Hope not as ornament, as method. As the crowd pressed forward, Aaliyah caught Caldwell's eye one last time across the chaos. The older woman gave a single nod, not of defeat, but of something deeper. Respect earned, certainty loosened. And in that moment, both understood. The arrow had found its mark, and the field would never look at boundaries the same way again. The applause did not die quickly. It rolled through Forum Hall in long, uneven waves, first thunderous, then softening into something warmer, almost reverent, like rain settling after a long storm. Aaliyah stood at the podium's edge, binder still open, the journal resting beside it with her father's sketch facing up. The arrow pointed the same way it always had, inward toward the center, toward the place where questions finally breathed. Flashbulbs popped in erratic bursts. Reporters surged forward, microphones extended, voices overlapping in a rush of questions she barely registered. Security formed a loose perimeter, but no one pushed too hard. The moment felt too fragile, too earned for roughness. She looked down first at Jamal. He was jumping on his seat, fists pumping, tears streaking his cheeks without shame. Lena stood beside him, one arm around his shoulders, the other pressed to her mouth as if to hold back a sob that had already escaped. Simone's phone was still recording, lens shaking with her own trembling hands, the live stream chat exploding with hearts and fire emojis and variations of SHE did it. Marcus remained at the foot of the steps, not rushing up, just watching. When their eyes met across the chaos, he gave her the smallest smile, the one that said, "I see you," without needing words. Dean Whitaker raised both hands for quiet. The room hushed gradually. "Miss Thompson," he said, voice carrying over the speakers, "the department will formally submit your demonstration to the Annals of Mathematics for expedited peer review and publication. In recognition of the originality and rigor shown here tonight, Georgia Tech extends an offer of early admission, full scholarship, research stipend, and dedicated mentorship. We would be honored to have you continue this work among us." The applause swelled again. Aaliyah nodded once, simple, grateful. Words still felt too small. Caldwell stepped to the side microphone. The noise quieted just enough. She looked directly at Aaliyah, posture straight but softer than before. "I tendered my resignation as department chair this afternoon," she said, calm, clear. "Effective at the end of the semester. My conduct at the first forum was not worthy of this institution or this discipline. I defended certainty because I believed it protected the field. You have shown me that certainty can become a cage. For that blindness and for the structures I helped maintain, I apologize, publicly, without reservation. And I commit to change, beginning with reforms to how we evaluate unconventional approaches and who gets heard." She turned to the audience. "This is not about one conjecture. It is about remembering that mathematics belongs to anyone persistent enough to listen. The room exhaled, a collective breath held too long. Then applause again, different this time. Not celebratory, but grateful, acknowledging. Aaliyah met Caldwell's gaze, no anger left, just quiet understanding. "Thank you," she said softly. The words carried, the room stilled. Then the surge began in earnest, reporters, students, faculty pressing forward. Security guided Aaliyah's family and Marcus through a side door into the small green room backstage. The door closed. Silence, sudden and sweet. Jamal launched himself at her again. "You did it! You really, really did it!" She hugged him tight, breathing in strawberry shampoo and kid sweat and home. Lena joined, then Simone, a messy knot of arms and tears and laughter that tasted like relief. Marcus stood a little apart, hands in pockets, watching with quiet joy. When the others pulled back, he stepped closer. "You okay?" Aaliyah wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand. "I think so. I don't know what comes next." "Whatever it is," he said, "you don't have to figure it out alone." She looked at him, really looked. The lines of fatigue that had deepened over the weeks were gone. In their place, something softer, open. "Dinner?" she asked, echoing his whisper from the stage. He smiled. "I know a place, no equations, just good food and better company." Lena cleared her throat gently from the doorway. "We'll take Jamal and Simone for ice cream. Triple scoop, you two, take your time." Jamal grinned, gap-toothed and bright. "Don't stay out too late, sis. We got celebrating to do at home." They left in a cheerful swarm. Jamal already planning flavors, Simone filming reaction clips for the group chat, Lena casting one last proud glance over her shoulder. The green room emptied, just Aaliyah and Marcus. He offered his hand. She took it. Fingers lacing together like they'd done it 100 times before, they walked out the back exit into the Atlanta night. The air was cool after the rain, clean, smelling of wet pavement and distant barbecue smoke. Campus lights glowed soft gold. Stars tried to peek through the city haze. They didn't speak much at first, just walked, side by side. Hands linked. The silence wasn't empty, it was full of everything they'd carried together. At a small park near the edge of campus, they stopped by a bench overlooking a quiet, reflecting pool. Water rippled under string lights. Somewhere nearby, a busker played saxophone, slow, soulful notes drifting on the breeze. Marcus sat. Aaliyah sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. "I meant what I said earlier," he told her. "I believe in you. Not just the proof, you." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "I was so scared I'd let everyone down, Dad, Mom, Jamal, even you. You didn't." He turned slightly so their faces were near. "You lifted them up. All of us," she looked at the water, saw their reflection, two silhouettes against the lights, hands still joined. "I don't know how to be this version of me yet," she admitted. "The one who solved it. The one people look at now." "You'll figure it out," he said, "one step at a time, and when it gets heavy, I'll be here holding the flashlight." She laughed softly. "You already did." He lifted her hand, pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. No rush, no demand, just quiet certainty. They sat there until the saxophone faded and the campus quieted. Eventually, they stood, walked again. Found the small restaurant he'd mentioned, hole-in-the-wall, warm lights, smell of garlic and rosemary. They ordered simple things, pasta, bread, sparkling water for her, red wine for him. They talked not about math, about childhoods, favorite books, the way Atlanta smelled after rain, the dreams they'd carried before anyone else believed in them. When dessert came, chocolate cake, shared fork, Aaliyah felt something loosen inside her chest. Not triumph exactly, peace. Later, outside her apartment building, they stopped under the street lamp. "Thank you," she said again, "for seeing me." He cupped her cheek gently. "Thank you for letting me." He kissed her then, soft, slow, full of everything unspoken. When they parted, she rested her forehead against his. "Go inside," he murmured. "Get some rest. Tomorrow's a new page." She nodded, watched him walk away until he turned the corner. Upstairs, the apartment was dark except for the kitchen light. Lena sat at the table, 2 mugs of tea waiting. "Jamal's asleep," she said. "Simone went home, I waited up." Aaliyah sat, took the mug, warmth seeped into her palms. Lena studied her daughter's face. "You look lighter. I feel it." Aaliyah smiled, small, real. "It's not over, but it's different now." Lena reached across, squeezed her hand. "Good different?" "Yeah," Aaliyah whispered. "Good different?" They sat in companionable quiet, tea cooling, city humming outside. Somewhere in the binder on the counter, Patterson's note rested beside her own proof. 2 voices, 170 years apart, finally heard. Aaliyah stood, walked to the window, looked out at Atlanta, lights steady, endless, alive. She touched the glass, cool against her palm, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone on her side of the boundary. The next morning, as sunlight spilled across the kitchen table, Aaliyah's phone buzzed with a new email from the Annals editorial office. Manuscript received. Expedited review assigned. Preliminary assessment. Groundbreaking. We look forward to your formal submission. And attached, a single forwarded message from an anonymous campus account. The arrow has landed. Thank you for listening. Sea morning arrived gently, sunlight slipping through the blinds in thin gold ribbons across the kitchen table. Aaliyah woke to the smell of coffee and the soft clink of Lena moving through the apartment. Ordinary sounds made extraordinary by the weight that had finally lifted from her chest. She lay still for a long moment, staring at the ceiling cracks that no longer felt like fractures waiting to widen. They just looked like lines now, quiet, harmless. The binder and journal sat on the nightstand where she'd left them. The Annals email glowed on her phone screen when she reached for it. Manuscript received. Expedited review assigned. Preliminary assessment. Groundbreaking. We look forward to your formal submission. Below it, Clara's forwarded message. The arrow has landed. Thank you for listening. See, she exhaled, long, slow, the kind of breath that releases years instead of seconds. Jamal shuffled in first, hair wild, still in yesterday's Spider-Man pajamas. You're famous now, sis. Simone sent like a million screenshots. People are calling you Arrow Girl online. Aaliyah laughed, real surprised. Arrow Girl? Yeah, they say you drew the line that changed everything. He climbed onto the bed beside her, peered at the phone. That's cool, but you're still just Ali to me. She ruffled his hair. Good, don't let me forget. Lena appeared in the doorway, 2 mugs in hand. She passed one to Aaliyah, black, no sugar, the way she liked it now, and sat on the edge of the mattress. You slept, Lena said, not a question, an observation. A little. Aaliyah took the mug, warmth seeping into her palms. Feels different. Lena studied her daughter's face. Different how? Like the questions answered, not gone, just answered. I can breathe around it now. Lena nodded slowly. Your dad used to say the same thing after he finished a tough proof, said the world got quieter inside his head. Aaliyah looked down at the journal, opened it to the sketch one last time. The arrow still pointed inward, steady, unapologetic. She closed it gently, set it aside. It was simple. Toast, jam, Jamal's running commentary on the memes flooding their group chat. Simone had compiled a thread titled From Hoodie to History, clips from the first forum, the viral whiteboard photo, last night's standing ovation. Comments ranged from awe to analysis to outright disbelief. A few were unkind, most weren't. Scrolled through them quietly. One caught her eye, an anonymous reply under the circled arrow image. Solve it, she showed us we've been looking in the wrong place. That's bigger. The phone down. I think that's enough for today. Lena squeezed her hand. Smart, the world can wait a minute. The day unfolded slowly. No rush. Aaliyah walked to the park near campus, the one with the reflecting pool where she and Marcus had sat the night before. The water was still today, mirroring the sky perfectly. She sat on the same bench, notebook in her lap, not for math this time, just words. Letter, not to send, just to write. Dear Dad. Not with fireworks, not with a big equation everyone cheers for, just with a quiet proof that said, here is the boundary, here is where local meets asymptotic, here is where the pattern ends because it has to. First, Patterson saw it 170 years before you. I just followed the line you both drew. Hey, we're okay. The question doesn't hurt anymore, it just rests. Ali. She folded the paper, slipped it inside the journal beside his sketch. Then she sat there a long time, watching light play on the water. Found her an hour later. He approached quietly, hands in pockets, a paper bag from the campus cafe in one hand. Might be here, he said. She smiled, predictable. Comfortable, he sat beside her, offered the bag. Blueberry muffin, no equations attached. They ate in companionable silence for a while. Eventually he spoke, the Annals email. Came this morning, they're moving fast. Good, it deserves to. For you. Hugged lightly. I go back to teaching, keep working on gaps, maybe write something with you if you want, no pressure. Her head against his shoulder. I want. He rested his cheek against the top of her head. Then we'll figure it out, one page at a time. Until the sun climbed higher, until the park filled with students and dogs and ordinary Friday noise. When they stood to leave, he took her hand, natural, unhurried. Her apartment building later that afternoon, Lena waited on the steps with Jamal. They'd made a sign, construction paper markers, proud of you, Arrow Girl. Jamal held it high, grinning. Aft pulled them both into a hug. Marcus hung back a step, smiling. The apartment smelled of Lena's cooking, collared rice, cornbread. They ate at the table, papers pushed aside, conversation light. Jamal's school project on black scientists, Simone texting updates from the viral threads, Lena's funny story about a patient who'd asked if that math girl on the news could fix his IV drip. Aaliyah stepped onto the small balcony. Atlanta glittered below, skyscrapers sharp against the evening sky, streetlights haloed in leftover humidity. Somewhere in that city, Caldwell was probably packing her office, turning off lights, beginning whatever came next. Somewhere else, Clara Voss was likely reading the news, smiling quietly at the Arrow's quiet landing. Touched the railing, cool metal against her palm. Marcus joined her, standing close enough that their shoulders brushed.